Quotations from myself, segment 71, quotation number 888. Why is it that an Englishman, once assaulted by a black, concludes that all blacks are violent, or once cheated by a Jew, believes that all Jews are dishonest, and yet never makes such a sweeping generalization upon being assaulted and cheated by his fellow Englishmen, and not just once, but many times over? Is it because by doing this he would, by implication, accuse himself of being violent and dishonest? And who is willing to do that? 889. In order to combat racism, chauvinism, xenophobia, jingoism, etc., which are but the different names to describe the essentially similar phenomena of malicious prejudice, that is, dislike or even extreme hate of somebody, not for what he actually does, but for all those terrible things he is allegedly capable of doing and is inevitably bound to do. It has to be established, first of all, and with utmost possible at the present moment degree of certainty, whether this seemingly timeless and universal pattern of human behavior is natural, that is, biologically programmed into human species, or unnatural, being the product of historical development of human society. Now, if racism is natural, then it's a part of life, and can only be eliminated with life itself. What we should do in this case is try to alleviate as much as possible its most pernicious symptoms and manifestations, and to learn to live and cope with the rest as if it were a force of nature like a hurricane or earthquake. On the other hand, if racism is unnatural, but man-made, so to speak, then its historical, political, economical, social, etc. causes have to be found. For until this is addressed, any solution will be partial and short-lived at best. And once the causes of racism are certain to be true ones, the utmost efforts should be applied to the whole society and by the whole society, for everybody is affected by it, to eradicate them one by one and step by step, depending on the practical consideration of the moment, until they are totally destroyed. Personally, I am inclined to think that prejudicial mode of perception is but a survival mechanism, and as such must be considered as an innate trait of any biological organism, the trait which has achieved in human species its highest degree of development. The way this mechanism functions is aptly summarized in the proverb, once bitten, twice shy, which describes exactly how the process of generalization works. For all our ideas about the world without fall more or less into category of premature generalization, since in order to survive, we have to arrive at them as fast as possible. There is no time, ordinarily, to gather sufficient data of numerous particulars, for life seldom gives us a second chance. It is better to err on the safe side than wait until complete certainty is achieved. For again, it must be absolutely crucial for our survival to make hasty generalization about the thing which can potentially harm us, no matter how remote the possibility of this seems at the moment. All things considered, these prejudicial tendencies serve us most of the time rather well, but the mistakes made because of them are more often harmful to others than to us. It is also worth mentioning that to speed up this vital process of generalization, we rely heavily on experience and testimony of others, often without questioning their veracity, all in order to save time and be prepared for some possible danger that could face us at any moment soon. Now, from all that has been said above, it is clear that the best and perhaps the only way to alleviate, if not to eradicate, horrible consequences of racism, chauvinism, xenophobia, jingoism, etc., lies in weakening those natural tendencies of hasty generalization, which are at the roots of our prejudices, by providing as safe environment as possible for each and every individual, and thus drastically reducing the necessity to protect oneself by the means of premature and therefore inevitably prejudicial generalization. Finally, to return as an afterthought to this widely accepted opposition between natural and unnatural, or as it's more often referred as nature and nurture, I tend to believe that whatever is classified as nurture, that is, the influence of family, society, politics, economic, etc., have on formation of individual personality, are all but the secondary causes, the product of extension of the first and primary one, the necessity to survive. As for example, the different ways family treats and brings up the children in different cultures could be explained as a specific survival strategy developed in a particular culture to successfully respond to its peculiar environment, and then through a successive practice by several generations is began to be looked at as a norm. But because those secondary causes are usually removed by several degrees from the primary one, the illusion of their separate distinctness is created and believed, when in fact the difference between the natural and nurturing causes of human behavior is not essential but superficial, and the so-called nurture can always be traced back to nature. 890. Words have helped us to discover truth. The truths help us to find the words. 891. Some people are so self-hypnotized by their own words, ideas, and theories that, as unfortunate as it is, the only thing that can wake them up to reality is a personal tragedy. 892. The fiction writers, at least the best of them, must be truly exceptional people, for they seem to have this amazing ability not only to penetrate and expose the minutest detail and nuances of a single individual's life, but also to soar high enough above it to give all of us the opportunity of much larger view of life in all its totality. By comparison, the rest of us not only do not possess this unique combination of such opposite abilities, but seldom enjoy either of them separately. 893. As we are approaching the end of 20th century, despite all the wonderful scientific discoveries and technological advances it has brought us, the struggle between science and religion for the minds of people, the struggle most vividly exemplified in the perpetual evolutionist versus creationist controversy, does not show any sign of abating, but on the contrary, is heating up. And I would say for purely utilitarian rather than ideological or theological reasons. For the most important criteria by which both science and religions are judged by ordinary people is not their competitive abilities to reveal the truth, the preoccupation of but a few philosophers and theologians, but their comparative utility in teaching human beings to treat one another better and making the world as a whole a more hospitable place for all of us to live in. Now, the initial promise of science at the beginning of the Age of Enlightenment was that by freeing itself and humanity from the constraints and superstitions of religion, it will lead us all to a better, more civilized and more humane life. But, as any unbiased witness would testify today, the results have been less than spectacular, and the promise essentially has not been fulfilled. People are not any better than they were 300 years ago. They don't treat each other with more kindness and compassion. Cruelty is rampant, morality has never probably been held in such a low esteem as today, and consequently disintegrating with a frightening speed. Life is becoming even more dangerous, brutal, and degrading than it was at the end of the 19th century. All this has happened while science has given the uncontested, for all intent and purpose, reign, at least for the last 100 years. As a result, more and more people, disappointed by this failure of science to improve the most important aspects of human existence, are willing to go back to religion, even while being aware that it is not scientifically valid, to give it another try. In conclusion, I think it would be a mistake to equate the present growing popularity of religion with the increase of religiosity in a strictly spiritual sense. Rather, in our pragmatic age, it is viewed by many, albeit without openly admitting it, as a means of improving and preserving moral and social quality of life, which science and technology was not only inadequate to accomplish, but are seen more and more as one of the causes of their deterioration. Of course, nobody knows for sure whether the renewed and improved religion will do better than science. Therefore, I would not be surprised or even disappointed when, if religion won't succeed where science has failed, the humanity will abandon it again, like it did in the past, and try science once more, or even, call me a wild optimist, come up with something totally new. 894. How am I to reconcile the constant urge and overpowering desire to express myself and speak up my mind with the equally constant and all-pervading worry and fear of offending or hurting somebody, but what I have said, or how I have said it, which is almost unavoidable, no matter how careful one is. My only self-excuse is, though I am aware that many will find it insufficient, that the offensive given is the result of an inadvertent oversight, rather than of an intentional malice.